115 million people. I want you to sit with that number for a second.
It's staggering.
It is. 115 million human beings all stopping whatever it is they're doing, cooking, working, just living their lives, to stare at a screen, all on one Sunday.
It's pretty much the only time of year where, a living room in a quiet suburb, a loud sports bar downtown, and some fancy Hollywood party are all somehow in sync.
Totally in sync.
They're all watching the exact same thing at the exact same moment.
And think about the money. I mean, companies are shelling out $7 million. $7 million for 30 seconds of your attention.
They're just praying you don't get up to grab another handful of chips.
Exactly. And then right in the middle of it all, you have a musical performance that more people will watch in 12 minutes than most legendary rock bands play to in their entire careers.
It really is mass media in its purest form, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
It functions like a national holiday, a real one.
It does.
Even if the government hasn't officially given us the Monday off yet, which they should.
Oh, they absolutely should. But it's also the biggest food day in America, right? Outside of Thanksgiving.
By a mile. We're talking more pizza, more chicken wings, more guacamole consumed in, a 6-hour window than pretty much any other day on the calendar.
And this is the thing that always gets me. At the absolute center of this multi-billion-dollar cultural engine is a game.
Just a game.
60 minutes on a play clock. So the question that we really have to ask is, how? How did a football game that started out with tons of empty seats and tickets that cost less than a movie today, how did that become the most watched broadcast in American history?
And that's the real story here. It wasn't an accident. It definitely wasn't inevitable. It's a story of corporate warfare, huge gambles, cultural shifts, and honestly, a few lucky bounces of football.
Welcome back to Daily New History. Today we're unpacking a story that is, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, about the biggest single spectacle in American life.
We are talking about the complete history of the Super Bowl.
And our mission here isn't just to give you a list of who won and what the scores were. We're really trying to understand how America fell so deeply in love with this one Sunday in February.
Right. So to do that, you can't really start with the first game. It doesn't make sense. You have to start with the war that came before it.
Absolutely. So let's set the stage. It's the early 1960s, and you don't have one big, happy football family. You have two rival leagues that, to put it mildly, hated each other.
Hated is the right word. You had the NFL, the National Football League. They were the establishment. I mean, they'd been around since 1920.
The old guard.
Totally. They were based in the big traditional cities, New York, Chicago, Green Bay. They were, the prestigious country club of football.
And like a country club, they're very exclusive. You couldn't just, write a check and get a team.
No way. Which brings us to a guy named Lamar Hunt. He was a 27-year-old heir to an oil fortune, and he didn't just love football. He desperately wanted to own a team.
So he goes to the NFL, hat in hand.
He tries. He tried to buy the Chicago Cardinals. The owners told him no. He tried to get an expansion team in Dallas. They said no. The NFL owners, who were these very old-school conservative guys, basically patted him on the head, said, thanks, but no thanks, kid.
And that kind of rejection is usually how a competitor is born, isn't it?
It's the classic American business story.
Yeah.
So Hunt goes out and finds a bunch of other wealthy guys who had also been rejected by the NFL. And they call themselves, kind of jokingly, the Foolish Club.
The Foolish Club. I love that.
And in 1960, they start their own league, the American Football League, the AFL.
So, if you won't let us into your club, we'll build our own clubhouse next door.
And not just that. They decided to play a different kind of game. The NFL at the time was very conservative. 3 yards and a cloud of dust, very run-heavy.
Grinded out football.
Exactly. The AFL, on the other hand, went to cities the NFL had ignored. Denver, Buffalo, Kansas City, and they played a flashier, more exciting style. They threw the ball downfield. They wanted high scores. They wanted action.
So how did the NFL react to this? They couldn't have been happy.
They weren't, but they also weren't worried. They looked at the AFL as this, minor league joke. Their attitude was basically, let them have their fun. They'll be out of business in a couple of years.
So what changed? What forced the big, powerful NFL to even acknowledge them, let alone work with them?
In a word, money. Or, more specifically, the massive, uncontrolled bleeding of money. The two leagues started a bidding war for the best college players.
Ah, so it became a talent war?
A huge one. If the NFL's Giants offered a star quarterback, say, $50,000, the AFL's Jets would come in and offer him $75,000. Player salaries were going through the roof.
And it was one guy in particular who really pushed this to the brink, right?
Yes, Al Davis,
Yeah.
the owner of the Oakland Raiders, he was a renegade. He basically started this guerrilla war against the NFL. He started signing NFL players who were already under contract to these, like, future deals.
So he was just openly tampering, driving up the price for everyone.
Completely. And by 1966, the owners on both sides, who were all businessmen, looked at their balance sheets and realized they were just destroying each other. They were on a path to mutual bankruptcy.
So they called a truce.
They did. In June of 1966, in secret meetings, they hammered out a merger. The plan was to fully combine the leagues by 1970, but to immediately start playing a championship game between the two league winners.
So the Super Bowl wasn't born out of some grand vision for a spectacular game. It was a business decision to stop a price war.
It's the most American origin story imaginable. A corporate merger designed to control labor costs accidentally created the biggest cultural event in the country.
Okay, so that brings us to the name, because it definitely wasn't called the Super Bowl at first.
Oh, God, no. The official, corporate-approved name was, you ready for this, the AFL-NFL World Championship Game.
Ugh. That's awful. It just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It sounds like a legal document. So the story of the real name is fantastic. It comes from Lamar Hunt, the AFL founder. Apparently, his kids were playing with a popular toy at the time called a Super Ball.
Oh, yeah. The little rubbery ball that would bounce ridiculously high.
That's the one, made of Zectron. So Hunt is in a league meeting, and they're talking about this clunky championship game name, and he just sort of jokingly suggests, why don't we call it the Super Bowl?
As a joke.
As a total joke. He actually thought the name was too informal, too silly. He figured a bowl game was for college. But a sports writer overheard it, and the press just loved it. It was short, it was punchy.
It had a ring to it.
It did. They started using it in headlines, and it just caught on. By the time the leagues tried to clamp down on it and push their official name, it was too late. The cat was out of the bag. The people had named it the Super Bowl.
That's incredible. $1 billion global brand named after a kid's toy. Okay, so let's go to that first game. January 15th, 1967. The LA Memorial Coliseum. If I were to time travel back to that day, what would it look like? Because in my head, the Super Bowl is always this packed, screaming spectacle.
Your modern brain would be in for a shock. The first thing you'd see is empty seats.
No way.
Seriously. The Coliseum holds, what, almost 100,000 people? Only 62,000 showed up. There were entire sections of empty bleachers. You could have walked up to the ticket window on game day and bought a ticket.
For the Super Bowl, you can't even get a preseason ticket like that now.
Right. And the price, get this, the most expensive ticket, the best seat in the house, was $12.
$12. I
Right.
can't even process that. That wouldn't even cover parking today.
And the whole atmosphere was just different. The halftime show wasn't a global pop superstar. It was the marching bands from the University of Arizona and Grambling State.
Very collegiate. Yeah.
Very. They released thousands of pigeons at one point. It was all very quaint and, honestly, a little small time compared to what we expect now.
And what about the broadcast? I heard that was weird, too.
It was completely unprecedented. Because the NFL's broadcast rights were with CBS and the AFL's were with NBC, they both had to televise the game.
So I was on two channels at the same time.
Simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And these two networks were bitter rivals. They hated each other. The story goes they actually built a fence down the middle of the TV truck parking lot to keep the crews from fighting.
That's amazing. Okay, so the game itself, we have the Green Bay Packers from the NFL, coached by the legendary Vince Lombardi,
A team that was already a dynasty in the NFL.
against the AFL's Kansas City Chiefs, Lamar Hunt's team. So did the game live up to the World Championship hype?
Not really. And that was a big problem. The Packers were a machine. Bart Starr at quarterback. They were disciplined. They were powerful. After a pretty close first half, they just dominated the second half and won easily, 35-10.
So the immediate takeaway for everyone watching must have been, see, we told you, the NFL is the real deal and the AFL is second rate.
That was the exact narrative. It confirmed the NFL's superiority complex. They thought, okay, we proved our point, we crushed their champion, and things got worse. The next year, in Super Bowl II, the Packers did it again, just as easily.
So people started to think this whole championship game idea was a dud.
They did. People were wondering if the merger was a mistake. If one league's champion is just going to blow out the others every single year, it's not a rivalry, it's an exhibition. It's boring.
Which brings us to the moment that changed absolutely everything.
The game that saved the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl III. This is where the legend really begins.
It is, without a doubt, the most important single game in pro football history. On one side, you have the NFL's Baltimore Colts. They were considered, at the time, maybe the greatest team ever assembled. They had just crushed the NFL.
And on the other side,
The AFL's New York Jets. And they were seen as a total long shot. The Colts were favored to win by 18 points.
18 points. In a championship game, that is a massive, massive spread. That's basically saying the other team has no chance.
It was viewed as a coronation for the Colts, a formality. But the Jets had an ace up their sleeve. They had Joe Namath.
Broadway Joe?
Broadway Joe. And you have to understand the culture clash he represented. The quintessential NFL quarterback of the era was the Colts' own Johnny Unitas. Crew cut, black high-top cleats, a yes sir, no sir kind of guy.
The ultimate professional.
Right. Joe Namath was not that. He had the long hair. He wore a full-length mink coat on the sideline. He famously dated models and actresses. He was the 1960s counterculture embodied in a quarterback.
And he was not shy, which leads to the guarantee.
The legendary moment. So 3 days before the game, Namath is at a dinner event in Miami. And some heckler from the crowd, a Colts fan, yells out something like, "The Colts are going to kill you."
And Namath doesn't just ignore him.
No. He leans into the microphone and says the most famous words in Super Bowl history. "We're going to win the game. I guarantee it."
The sheer confidence, the arrogance even. If you say that and then go out and get crushed, you become a punchline for the rest of your life.
He would have been a laughingstock forever. The media went crazy. They called him arrogant, foolish. But Namath wasn't just talking trash. He had seen something on the game film. The Colts' defense was powerful but rigid. Namath knew his offense could exploit it.
And then they had to go out and actually do it.
And they did. The Jets won 16-7.
And it wasn't a fluke, like a lucky turnover or something.
Not at all. They controlled the entire game. They ran the ball effectively. They frustrated the Colts' offense. And the significance of this win, it just cannot be overstated.
It proved the AFL belonged.
It did more than that. It legitimized the entire merger. It turned the Super Bowl from a predictable exhibition into a true must-see rivalry. It gave the event stakes. If Namath doesn't make that guarantee and the Jets don't win, the Super Bowl as we know it might not even exist.
And it also created the blueprint for the Super Bowl superstar, right?
Yeah.
Namath became this larger-than-life figure, an icon.
Exactly. He was the first player who was as big as the game itself. And that's when you see the event start to transform from just a championship into a full-blown spectacle.
So after that, the merger is completed in 1970. We get the AFC and NFC conferences we know today. Let's move into the 70s. This is where we start seeing the rise of dynasties, right?
Yes, the 70s were all about dynasties. And the first one to really make its mark was the Miami Dolphins.
The perfect season.
The one and only. In 1972, they went 70-0, undefeated through the regular season and the playoffs, and then they won Super Bowl VII. No other team has ever had a perfect season from start to finish.
And there's a tradition associated with that, isn't there? Something about champagne.
There is. It's a great piece of sports lore. The legend is that every single year, as soon as the last undefeated team in the NFL loses its first game, the surviving members of that 72 Dolphins team pop a bottle of champagne together.
A celebratory toast to their own enduring greatness. I love that.
It's protecting the legacy. But after the Dolphins' brief reign, the rest of the decade really belonged to one team.
The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Steel Curtain. And that nickname was perfect. It reflected the city of Pittsburgh, blue-collar, industrial, tough as nails. And it's exactly how the team played.
They just beat you up.
Physically dominated you, with players like Mean Joe Green on defense and Terry Bradshaw at quarterback. They won 4 Super Bowls in a 6-year span.
Wow. 4 in 6 years.
And this established the whole idea of a Super Bowl dynasty, a team that could define an entire era. This is also when the Roman numerals really took hold. It wasn't just the 1975 championship game. It was Super Bowl X. It sounded epic. It sounded historic.
Like a gladiatorial contest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It added a sense of gravitas and history to the whole event.
Okay, so the game is established. It's legitimate. The dynasties are building the lore. But I want to talk about the other side of this. When did the Super Bowl stop being just for football fans? Because today, my mom watches, my cousins who don't know what a first down is, they watch. They're there for the commercials and the halftime show. When did that shift happen?
You can actually pinpoint it to a very specific moment in a very specific year, 1984.
How fitting.
Incredibly fitting. It was an ad from Apple. They were launching their new Macintosh computer, and they hired Ridley Scott, the director of Alien and Blade Runner, to make the commercial.
This is the famous one, right? With the woman in the running shorts throwing the sledgehammer at the big screen.
That's the one. It was dark, it was dystopian, it was cinematic. It didn't even really show you the product. But here's the crazy part of the story. The board of directors at Apple absolutely hated it.
They hated it. It's one of the most famous ads of all time.
They thought it was confusing and morbid. They wanted to pull it from the broadcast. Steve Jobs and the marketing team had to fight like crazy just to get them to air it. They bought 2 minutes of time, but they got so nervous they sold off one of the minutes. They ended up running the 60-second version just one time.
Only once.
One single airing. And because of that scarcity, it created this massive buzz. The next day at work, the question wasn't, did you see the Raiders win? It was, did you see that crazy Apple commercial?
It became the water cooler moment.
It completely changed the game. Advertisers realized the Super Bowl wasn't just a platform to sell a product. It was a cultural stage.
Yeah.
A place to make a statement, to tell a story. And that's when the costs just started to explode.
We went from, what, $40,000 for an ad in Super Bowl I?
To $7 million for a 30-second spot today. And that's just to buy the time. It doesn't include the millions more to actually produce the ad with big-name directors and celebrities.
It's fascinating because it completely flips the normal viewing experience. Most of the time, we do everything we can to skip ads. But on Super Bowl Sunday, the ads are the content. People shush each other when the commercials come on.
It's the only broadcast of the year where that happens. You have these ads that become part of the culture, the Budweiser Frogs, the Mean Joe Green Coke ad, the E-Trade Baby. They become their own little short films that everyone talks about.
Okay, so let's get back to the on-field action. The 80s and 90s, the commercial spectacle is taking off, but we also had some of the most iconic teams ever.
This was the era of the glamour dynasties. And it starts with San Francisco 49ers, the team of the 80s.
And their quarterback, Joe Montana. Joe Cool.
The nickname was perfect. And there's one story that captures his essence better than any other. It's Super Bowl XD3 against the Cincinnati Bengals.
I think I know this one.
It's the end of the game. The 49ers are down by 3 points. They have the ball on their own 8-yard line with just over 3 minutes left. The pressure is just immense. The whole season is on the line.
92 yards to go.
And the stadium is deafening. So Montana steps into the huddle to call the first play of the drive, and his teammates are, incredibly tense. And he just calmly looks over at one of his linemen, pauses, and points into the crowd and says, "Hey, isn't that John Candy over there?"
In the middle of the most high-pressure moment of his career, he's celebrity spotting.
It was genius. It completely broke the tension. Everyone in the huddle kind of chuckled, took a deep breath, and relaxed. And then he just surgically marched them down the field for the game-winning touchdown.
That's incredible. He won 4 Super Bowls and famously never threw a single interception in any of them.
A perfect record. And he was running that innovative West Coast offense, which was all about short, precise, rhythmic passing. It changed how offense was played in the NFL.
Then we move into the 90s and a new dynasty emerges. The Dallas Cowboys.
America's team. They were big, they were flashy, they were dominant. They had the triplets quarterback Troy Aikman, running back Emmitt Smith, and wide receiver Michael Irvin.
And they just took over the league.
They won 3 Super Bowls in a 4-year span. They were the team you either loved or you loved to hate. There was no in-between. But you can't talk about the dynasties of this era without talking about the heartbreak.
Oh, the Buffalo Bills.
The poor Buffalo Bills. It is one of the most tragic stories in all of sports.
They went to 4 straight Super Bowls. 4 in a row.
Which is an incredible achievement in itself. Just getting there 4 years in a row is almost impossible.
But they lost every single one.
Everyone. And the first one was the most painful. Super Bowl XXV against the New York Giants. It comes down to the final seconds. The Bills are down by 1 point, and their kicker, Scott Norwood, comes out to attempt a 47-yard field goal to win the game.
The kick to win the Super Bowl.
The ultimate moment of pressure. He kicks it, and the kick sails just outside the uprights. It's wide right.
Wide right. Those 2 words are just infamous. They still haunt the city of Buffalo.
They absolutely do. To climb the mountain 4 separate times and get pushed off the summit each time, it's brutal. But it's part of the Super Bowl's lore. It shows you just how thin the line is between glory and agony.
So let's pivot to the other half of the spectacle, the halftime show. We talked about how it started with marching bands, but for a long time, halftime was just when everyone got up to use the bathroom or grab another beer. What was the big turning point?
The turning point was 1993. The NFL had a real problem on its hands. They were looking at the ratings, and they saw a huge dip during halftime. People were changing the channel.
What were they watching instead?
Specifically, they were flipping over to Fox to watch a special live episode of the sketch comedy show In Living Color. The NFL was losing its own audience during its biggest event. They knew they had to do something huge to keep people from touching that remote.
So they went big.
They went as big as you could possibly go. They hired the single biggest star on the planet, Michael Jackson.
And he understood that it wasn't just a concert, it was a performance.
He completely understood the assignment. The show starts, and he just stands there, motionless on stage, for a full minute and a half.
Which is an eternity on live television.
It built this insane amount of tension and anticipation. The crowd was going crazy. He treated it like a piece of theater. And the result, the ratings during his halftime show actually went up.
That had never happened before.
Never. And it changed everything. The halftime show was no longer a break from the game. It was a main event in its own right. It launched what you could call the spectacle era.
Where you started getting all of the biggest names, U2, the Rolling Stones, Beyonce, Bruce Springsteen.
It became this mini concert that every major artist wanted to play. It's a career-defining moment. But there's one performance that is almost universally considered the greatest of all time.
It has to be Prince.
Prince. Super Bowl XLI in Miami, 2007. And on game day, there's a torrential downpour. A literal monsoon.
And a nightmare for an outdoor concert with all that electronic equipment.
The producers were panicking. They went to Prince and asked him if he was okay performing in the rain, if they needed to cut the show short. And Prince's legendary response was, "Can you make it rain harder?"
That is the most Prince thing I have ever heard.
He goes out there in the pouring rain with the wind whipping around, and he delivers this absolutely electrifying performance, culminating in him playing Purple Rain in the middle of a purple-lit rainstorm. The imagery was just iconic.
It felt like it was divinely ordained. You couldn't have scripted it better.
It was pure magic. But there was a brief hiccup in the spectacle era, wasn't there?
Yes, the wardrobe malfunction?
2004. Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake. That half second of exposure at the very end of the show created a massive cultural firestorm.
The FCC got involved. There were huge fines.
It was a whole thing. And the NFL, which is a very risk-averse organization, panicked. For the next several years, they booked safe, classic rock acts. Paul McCartney, The Who, Tom Petty, great artists, but definitely a move away from contemporary pop.
Before they eventually swung back to the huge pop spectacles with people like Katy Perry and Lady Gaga.
Exactly. Yeah. And now we've seen hip-hop finally take center stage with Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Eminem. The halftime show is always a perfect snapshot of what's happening in American popular music at that exact moment.
All right, we absolutely have to talk about the modern era of the game itself. And you can't tell that story without talking about one team, the New England Patriots.
The dynasty. With a capital D, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, the scale of their dominance is just hard to wrap your head around. Over 2 decades, they went to 9 Super Bowls together.
9, and they won 6 of them.
6. And it all started in such an improbable way. Tom Brady wasn't supposed to be the star. He was a 6th-round draft pick, number 199, a total afterthought.
He was the backup.
He was the backup to a superstar quarterback, Drew Bledsoe. But Bledsoe gets a serious injury early in the 2001 season. Brady, this unknown kid, has to step in. And somehow, he leads them all the way to Super Bowl XXVI.
And they were huge underdogs in that game.
Huge. They were playing the St. Louis Rams, who were known as the greatest show on turf. They had this explosive, high-powered offense that was supposed to run the Patriots out of the building.
This was also the first Super Bowl after the September 11th attacks. The mood in the country was very different.
It was. The patriotism was at an all-time high. U2's halftime show, where they performed with the names of the 9/11 victims scrolling behind them, was an incredibly powerful and emotional moment. And then the game comes down to the wire.
And Brady, the kid nobody believed in, leads the game-winning drive for a field goal as time expires.
It was the perfect Cinderella story, and it launched a 20-year dynasty. But what makes their story so compelling is that it wasn't just wins. There were devastating losses.
The perfect season.
2007. The Patriots go 18-0. They are undefeated, a machine, on the verge of becoming the greatest team in history. And they lose in the Super Bowl to the New York Giants.
Because of the single most ridiculous catch I have ever seen. The David Tyree helmet catch.
It defies logic. Eli Manning escapes a sack he should never have gotten out of, throws it downfield, and David Tyree somehow pins the ball against his own helmet and holds on. It's one of the greatest plays in history, and it ruined perfection.
But then, years later, you get the ultimate redemption. The game that defies logic in the other direction.
Super Bowl LI. The game now known only by a score, 28-3.
If you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, you might want to skip ahead 30 seconds.
The Falcons were dominating the Patriots. They were up 28-3 late in the third quarter. The game was over. I mean, the win probability analytics said Atlanta had a 99.8% chance of winning.
It was a done deal.
But then, Tom Brady happened. He just methodically, surgically led one comeback drive after another. The Patriots scored 31 unanswered points. They forced the first overtime in Super Bowl history, and they won.
It was the greatest comeback ever, and the greatest collapse ever. 28-3 is now a meme. It's a cultural shorthand for blowing a massive lead in anything.
It is. And now, in the post-Brady era, it feels like we're watching the next dynasty form in real time with the Kansas City Chiefs and their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes.
He's the new face of the league, 3 championships in 5 years.
But beyond the teams on the field, the business of the modern Super Bowl is just a whole different universe now.
Let's talk about the tickets, because the idea of walking up and buying a $12 ticket is just laughable now.
Laughable is an understatement. The face value on tickets can be thousands of dollars, but almost no regular person can get those. On the resale market, you're looking at, what, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 for a seat in the upper deck.
It's insane, and that completely changes who is actually in the stadium, right?
It does. The crowd at the Super Bowl now is largely corporate sponsors, celebrities, and the very wealthy. It's not the diehard painted-face season ticket holder. That gives the stadium a different, less raucous atmosphere. The real passionate fans are having parties at home.
And the other massive change is gambling.
Huge. For decades, it was this thing you did illegally through a local bookie. Now, with sports betting legalized in so many states, it's completely mainstream. Over $16 billion is legally wagered on the game.
And it's not just betting on who wins, it's the prop bets, the proposition bets.
Which are so much fun. They've gamified every single second of the broadcast. You can bet on the length of the national anthem, down to the second.
You can bet on the result of the opening coin toss, heads or tails, a 50-50 guess.
You can bet on what color the Gatorade will be that gets dumped on the winning coach. Will it be orange, blue, yellow? It's absurd, but it keeps you invested in every single moment, even if the game itself turns into a blowout.
So let's zoom out from the game and talk about the day itself. Super Bowl Sunday. Culturally, it really is an unofficial holiday.
It absolutely is. We mentioned the food statistics, and they are genuinely mind-boggling. 1.4 billion chicken wings consumed. That's a real number.
Yeah.
It's hard to even picture that many chicken wings.
And it's a huge drinking day.
One of the biggest. Some studies say it's second only to New Year's Eve or the 4th of July in terms of alcohol consumption in America.
Which leads directly to what everyone calls Super Bowl Monday, or Sluggish Monday.
Yeah, the national hangover. Productivity across the country just tanks the next day.
Yeah.
Millions of people call in sick. There's a recurring half-serious push every year to just make the Monday after the Super Bowl an official national holiday.
I would sign that petition.
The economic argument is that we'd probably be better off just giving everyone the day off, since not much work is getting done anyway.
But beyond the food and the parties, it's become this moment of national identity, hasn't it? In a country that feels very divided a lot of the time, this is the one thing that almost everyone tunes into.
It really is a shared experience. No matter your politics, your background, where you live, you probably have an opinion on the Super Bowl. You saw the halftime show. You saw the funniest commercial. It creates a common cultural touchstone.
And the patriotism is always front and center.
It dialed up to 11. You have the military flyovers, the giant American flag covering the field, the performance of the national anthem. Whitney Houston's rendition in 1991 during the Gulf War is still the benchmark.
Yeah.
It was so powerful, it was released as a single and became a top 20 hit.
Wow. And now it's becoming a global event.
It is. It's broadcast in over 180 countries. The NFL is aggressively expanding its brand with games in London, Germany, Mexico. But the Super Bowl itself will almost certainly always be in the U.S., mainly because of the time zones. It's America's primetime event.
So before we wrap this all up, I want to bring it back to the human element. Because with all the talk of billions of dollars and global brands, at its heart, it's a game played by people.
And that's ultimately why we watch. We watch for the incredible human stories, the unlikely heroes.
Like Malcolm Butler.
Perfect example. An undrafted rookie, a guy who was working at Popeyes not long before he made it to the NFL. And he makes the game-winning, championship-saving interception for the Patriots on the goal line.
In a moment where everyone on planet Earth thought the Seahawks were going to hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch.
Still the most debated play call in Super Bowl history. But that's the drama. Or you think of Kurt Warner, a guy who was bagging groceries in a supermarket and then a few years later becomes a league MVP and a Super Bowl champion. It's the American dream playing out in shoulder pads.
But there's the other side of that coin, too, the heartbreak, the great players who never get a ring. Dan Marino is the classic example, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. Gets to the Super Bowl once early in his career, loses, and never makes it back.
And it becomes the first line of his biography. It defines a legacy. The Super Bowl writes history in permanent ink. Winning it makes you an immortal. Losing it, or never getting there, becomes a but in your story.
And then you have all the myths and superstitions that surround it.
The fun stuff. The Madden curse, where players who appear on the cover of the video game seem to have bad luck. The so-called Drake curse. We love finding patterns and creating these modern folktales around the game.
So when you put it all together, we've gone from a half-empty stadium and a game nobody was sure about to this absolute global behemoth. What does it all represent?
I think at the end of the day, it represents a very American combination of things. It's competition, it's capitalism, it's spectacle, and it's community, all rolled into one. It's loud, it's excessive, it's over the top, but it is undeniably ours.
It's the one time a year we're all on the same page.
Right. Whether you're there for the brilliant coaching strategy, the hilarious commercials, or you're just there for the 7-layer dip.
We're all watching together.
Exactly.
Well, that's all the time we have for this conversation. Hopefully, we've given you a few new facts you can bring out at your next Super Bowl party.
Just, try not to be the person who explains the history of the West Coast offense while the best commercial of the night is on. Read the room.
That is some very good advice. If you enjoyed our talk, please share it with a friend before the next big game. And make sure you're subscribed to Daily New History.